was a barber and he was a violinist. He had two careers. The reason he became a barber, I suppose, was because a professional musician couldn't make a living. So he started playing violin. He taught violin. He played in the teens into the early 20s at the local movie theaters in the pit for silent movies. He was a musician with the Philharmonic, and he had a dance band right through the 30s, as well as he was a barber. In those days, people actually worked for a living.
That's really interesting, and I'll tell you why. And that'll be the end of my speaking part, because...
Are you going to sing now?
I usually end by singing, because when people would say Tick was a barber, that was the only thing they said. So you were left with the impression that here was someone who was not very accomplished and simply, found a way to cut people's hair. But your additional information casts a very different picture on what I think is true of numbers of Jews at that time.
Well, I'll take issue with you on that, Billy, because my dad was very accomplished. He was accomplished as a barber, because there are people who have trades, there are people who are professionals who are mediocre if they reached their highest accomplishment. There are others who, when they do something, they do it with great skill. And my dad had great skill as a barber. It wasn't his first choice of career, but he had great skill. He was a great communicator. If you wanted to find out what was happening in Hamilton, and Wendy, you can talk to your dad about that, because all the news that was going around would end up in my dad's barber shop, because everyone was there and everyone was there to talk, and my dad was great at prompting them to talk and getting things going. And because we lived above the store and I was a little pisher growing up above the store, I was there from the time I was a toddler, and I just absorbed all of this more or less like a sponge, because it was just part of my life, So I had a sort of a sense of what was going on, and because I lived right on King Street, all the merchants were on King Street, and where it is between King and Bay now, where you have the Sheraton Hotel and you have the Standard Life and you have the Stelco Tower, from James right down to Bay were all stores with apartments above them. And if you go one block west to Bay Street going west, and you see the Regal Hotel there, and you see all the stores with the places above that continues right out to Victoria Park, that's the way it was. It was that way right to King Street, to James Street. And amongst those stores were a lot of Jewish merchants. Levinson's Shoes was there. I think Lester Goldberg had his fur shop, Modern Furs. There was Bube's Ladies Wear. Harry Kellman had Marvell Jewelers, or Kellman Jewelers, whatever it was. Mr. Steinberg, Bailey Waxman's father, had the Belgium shop, which was a dress shop. What's his name? Al Till had a little kids wear shop. Jack Gittes had a fur shop. I mean, it was like that was a local area, and York Street was behind, and you had Bolslowski's Delicatessen, which was a place where everyone went, and we went there right through the 60s when I was a young lawyer, because that's where everyone met. Vic Kops was there every day. We were all getting a cholesterol fix. We didn't have a clue what the hell we were doing to our bodies, but that's the way it was. There was York Delicatessen. On the other side of the street was Al Sachs and Bill Cohen. There was Platt's Delicatessen, which was on the other side of the street, and that then was taken over by someone else. Murray Auto Parts was at the corner. Across the street next to Bolslowski's was Gordon Zwicker, who had his auto parts store, and Sam Katz and family had their place on the other corner. The fourth corner was made up of the Fisher Hotel. So I'm sort of giving a geographical description of what Hamilton looked like back then. The AMP was on Market Street and was on York Street, because at that time, Market Street and York Street from Park came to a point at Market Square. And right at that point was the Royal Bank, and then next to it was a company called Trigano Seeds, I think. And I think they had openings on both sides because it was a small area. And then the AMP did the same thing. And that was actually, Market Square was actually a big square. They had the open market, and on McNabb Street, going north across from the market, Sam Netkin had his fruit stand, his fruit company. It was really, there was, as I'm thinking about it, there was a drugstore on the corner called Fox's Drugs, and there was Dressler's Fish Market, and up where York Delicatessen was, next to it was Hamilton Kosher Butchers. That was the Luchter brothers. And then Percy Wright had his fruit place. I mean, it was really a wonderful area. And everyone knew everyone, and everyone got together to schmooze. It was a better time, actually, in a lot of ways. There wasn't the competition, there wasn't the need to succeed. Everyone succeeded just because they worked hard.
Can you paint a picture for us of the barber shop? Where was it? What did it look like? When the men would come, what kinds of things would they be talking about? What would you overhear?
A lot of lies. A lot of lies. A lot of one-upsmanship. A lot of deals were done in that store. Okay, I'll give you the geographical layout. The front door of the Sheraton Hotel, 116 King West. My dad's barber shop where we lived was 118 King West. Okay, so we were the front door of the Sheraton. Then you came in, on the right was a showcase that had cigarettes. They were allowed back then. But when you walked in, there was two windows, and they were dressed with tobacco and other items. And you walked in, and it was a narrow room. It was probably about 15 feet wide. And you came in, on the right was the showcase. On the left was a seat, then the sink with the old goose neck so people could get their hair washed. My dad's chair. On the right was the cash register, very important, and then a place for his tools. And there was a second chair, but he never had a second barber. And then the rest was just surrounded with chairs.
And was he the Jewish barber? Would everybody go to him?
I would have hoped so. He was the only Jewish barber in town for a long time, and then after the war, a fellow came from Europe, Leon, I don't know what his last name was, and he had a barber shop on York Street. But my dad had a wonderful, loyal following. I often said that if my clientele as a lawyer was his clientele as a barber, I would have been the most successful lawyer in the world. Just everyone went there because it was a place to relax and schmooze and just enjoy. And my mother was a great cook, and she loved, as a good Jewish mother, to feed everyone. So whenever anyone was there and my mother was around, she would fix them a little nush if they were so inclined, and everyone seemed to be so inclined. It was just part of the way things were done. That no one had cell phones, no one had computers, no one had email. It was a slower pace. It was wonderful, and the stress level was much lower.
See, Wendy wouldn't ask, how much was a haircut?
Haircuts were about a quarter back then, maybe 50 cents. Well, my dad passed away in '65. His anniversary of his death, 40 years, was January 5th. and I think when he passed away, haircuts were $1.25. I think they're more now, are they?
I think so.
Yeah. My dad's timing wasn't great, but his timing was great because if he hadn't been there when he was, I wouldn't be here now. So there's good things happen from everything. Everything is b'sher. It's meant to be. What can I say? So
it's an important perspective as a lawyer. That everything is b'sher.
Stan, do you have any memories, like any big historical events that you might have been in the barbershop and you heard about it in the barbershop, like something that stands out? Or scandal, maybe. I mean, it doesn't have to be big historical. It could be even a local scandal.
Not really. If there were scandals, I wouldn't mention it on the camera, because what was then is dead and buried, and families may still be around, and nothing would be gained by it. But you have to remember, I was a young kid, and what was a scandal, what wasn't a scandal, wouldn't mean much to me. But a lot of interesting things happened. We had the center was down on John Street North, across from where your grandfather lived. I think it was 279 John Street North. That's just a number that comes to my mind. Yeah. And the center was where the Italo-Canadian Club is now. That's where I sort of grew up until I was about 10 or 11, when we moved to the center on Delaware. We ran the home camp out of the John Street North center. That's, I think, where David and I first met. David Steinberg and I, we were like 4 and 5 years old, and went to home camp together. And then we went to Cheder there. That's where it was. And on Vine Street was the Shula, which was a Yiddish-speaking school to teach the kids to speak Yiddish. And that's then became the funeral home, and then that, and then we moved off to Delaware, and then now we're out west.
What was this home camp? Was it on John Street?
It was on John Street. We used to go to the beach, I think Station 26, but all the arts and crafts and everything else was conducted there. It was our Camp Kadima as it's evolved to today, but back then it was a little more simple. It was just the parents getting rid of their kids. I'm sure that's different today. Things do change. And it was a lot of fun.
Was the John Street, what was it called? Was it called the JCC?
It was called the center. It was called the
And
center.
was it, well, like, it was a good place? It was
Better attended than the one today. Up until I think the shuls became more involved in education, until the shuls became more involved in social activities. The center was the center of activity for our group. We went there for Talmud Torah. We went there for arts and crafts. We went there for Sunday program. I mean, it was the center of our activities, and it was great. It was what we knew. It was what we knew. It was a safe haven, and we had a lot of fun. We had a good time, and they had dances there. But that was later because I was too young back then. There was a time, when I was young. Yesterday.
There was a time when I was young. That's the title of the book. There was a time when I was young.
So would you say then that then what was the turning point when the community started to get fragmented? Was it when the shuls started to do their own thing?
Well, first of all, I wouldn't say that the community is fragmented. I think that times changed, interests changed. I mean, if you're going to set the complete picture, you have to remember the shuls at the time. The Temple Anshe Sholem in the 40s was on Houston Street. Cannon Street Shul was called Cannon Street Shul because it was on Cannon Street. Hess Street Shul was called that because it was on Peter Street. The Beth Jacob was at the corner of Hunter and Park. And it was down below, and there was a ramp going up. And there was another shul, Ferguson Avenue Shul, which became the Carpenters Union Hall, and the building's still there on Ferguson Avenue, I think. It's just one door south of Wilson on the east side of the street. I drive by. I don't remember it not being there even today. Beth Jacob was an Orthodox shul. They had a balcony, and when they moved to Aberdeen, they became conservative with the mix. The temple had a Sunday school. I went to it. I don't remember the other shuls having any school, so the school for the community was the Talmud Torah. So there was a reason to go to the center. They didn't have any physical space for activity, so the social activity was at the center. But then the change came with education becoming something that the shuls wanted to take proprietorship in. The Hamilton Hebrew Academy came about. It provided a day school, and by having a day school, the kids that went there weren't going to go to Talmud Torah after school. So what you had was a situation where the demographics changed, people moved to different areas, and by the time the 60s came around into the 70s, it was a different model. I mean, I'm not sure that they would have built the center on Delaware had the change come earlier, because that was a major investment. I mean, that had a gymnasium, that had a social hall, that had classrooms. I mean, it was a true center. And it was well used. I mean, it was well used, and it was great. The only problem with it was from the moment it was built, it was in the wrong part of town. It was a nice piece of land, and conceptually, had it been built 10 years earlier, more people lived in the east and so on. But by the time that it was conceived and built, everyone had moved west. So it became a real pain in the neck to go there.